Okay, so let's dive into U.S. visas and how to get a green card.
Right.
Now, if you're like a lot of people looking into this, I bet the whole system just seems crazy complex, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It really is. It's like this giant puzzle with way too many pieces, right? You're
Yeah,
just like, where do I even begin?
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly why we put this together
Yay.
to kind of help you navigate through this.
Yeah. The U.S. immigration system can feel incredibly overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
Like, almost intentionally so. Sometimes you think.
Right.
But what we're trying to do here is we've sifted through all the information for you,
Right.
all those different visa types, all the pathways to residency, and we've pulled out the really important stuff, the things you really need to know.
Yeah. The key takeaways. Right.
Exactly.
So what we really want to do today is make sure you understand the difference between visas for a temporary stay.
Right.
Those are the non-immigrant visas, and the ones meant for permanent residency, the immigrant visas.
Okay.
And most importantly, we'll highlight which temporary visas can actually turn into a green card,
Yes.
and we'll also break down the main categories of immigrant visas.
Absolutely. So think of this as your roadmap
Yeah,
to navigating the U.S. immigration system.
exactly.
Yeah.
Your guide to the green card maze.
That's it.
Okay, so let's jump right in.
Okay.
First up, we've got the non-immigrant visas.
Right.
These are for temporary stays, but some of them offer a chance to get a green card later on.
Right.
And our sources mainly categorize these as work visas and student or exchange visitor visas.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
Okay, so let's start with work visas.
Okay.
And the first one that comes to mind, the one everyone's heard of, is the H-1B.
The H-1B Classic.
Right. It's for professionals in specialized fields.
Yes.
IT, engineering, healthcare.
Those high-skilled jobs.
Exactly. High-level expertise.
Right.
Now, the thing to remember here is you need a U.S. employer to sponsor you.
Yeah, that's key. You can't just apply for this on your own.
Right. It's not a do-it-yourself kind of visa.
Not at all.
So you need a company that's willing to back you up.
Right. And that's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Because the H-1B can be that first step.
Towards a green card.
Exactly. It gives you temporary status, but if your employer really likes you and they see you as a long-term asset, they can sponsor you for a green card down the line.
Okay.
And that's usually through the EB2 or EB3 categories, which we'll talk about more later.
So the H-1B is like a stepping stone.
It is a crucial on-ramp for so many skilled professionals who want to build a career and a life in the U.S.
Okay, so next we have the L1 visa.
Ah, yes, the intra-company transfer visa.
Right. So if you work for a multinational company and they want to move you to their U.S. office, this is your ticket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping those global teams connected.
Yeah. And there are two different types, right?
There are the L1A and the L1B.
And what's the difference?
Well, the L1A is specifically for managers and executives.
Okay.
And this one has a pretty good path to a green card through the EB1C category.
Which is designed for multinational executives and managers.
Exactly. They go hand in hand.
Okay. And the L1B?
The L1B is for employees with specialized knowledge.
Okay.
You know, those people with that niche expertise.
Right.
Now, a green card is possible with this visa too, but the path is usually slower and it still depends on employer sponsorship.
So your position in the company makes a big difference.
It does.
Yeah.
The higher up you are, the smoother the transition to permanent residency tends to be,
So it's all about your role.
and how much the company values you.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about the O1 visa?
Ah, yes, the Extraordinary Ability Visa.
This one sounds pretty exclusive.
It is. This one is for the rock stars of their fields, you know, scientists, artists, athletes, business leaders, people who are recognized internationally for their amazing talents.
So we're talking top-tier talent here.
The best of the best Nobel Prize winners, Olympic athletes, you know, the kind of people who are at the top of their game globally.
Wow, and this visa helps them get a green card.
It does. It gives them a strong chance to transition to permanent residency through the EB1 category.
That's the priority workers category.
That's the one. And as the name suggests, it's one of the fastest routes to a green card.
So that international recognition really opens doors.
It does. It shows the U.S. that you have something special to offer.
Okay, so we've got the H-1B, the L1, and the O1. Now, what about the E-2 visa?
The investor visa.
Right. This is for entrepreneurs who want to invest in a U.S. business.
That's right.
So if you've got some capital and you're ready to put it to work in the U.S., this is the visa for you.
It is. But there's a catch.
What's that?
The E2 itself doesn't directly lead to a green card.
Oh, so you can run a business, but you can't necessarily stay permanently.
That's the tricky part. Now you can explore other options like the EB-5 investor green card.
Which we'll talk about later.
Exactly. But that requires a much bigger investment.
So the E2 is like a temporary business pass.
It is. It lets you get your foot in the door, but becoming a permanent resident takes a whole other process.
Okay, so we've covered the main work visas that could potentially lead to a green card. Now let's shift gears and talk about student and exchange visitor visas.
Right.
Like the F1 and the J1.
These are all about education and cultural exchange.
Right. So what about their green card prospects?
Well, it's not always a straight line.
Okay.
Let's start with the F1 student visa.
This is for people who want to study in the U.S., right?
Exactly, for academic studies.
Okay.
Now, our sources are very clear. There's no direct path from an F1 to a green card.
You can't just graduate and automatically get a green card.
Nope. The purpose of the visa is to study, not necessarily to immigrate.
So your intent matters.
It does. It plays a big role in whether a visa can lead to permanent residency.
But there are indirect routes, right?
There are. The most common one is to get an H-1B work visa after graduation.
Assuming you find a U.S. employer to sponsor you.
Of course.
And then that H-1B can potentially lead to a green card.
Right, through the EB-2 or EB-3 categories.
So it's a multi-step process.
It is. And there are other options too, like marrying a U.S. citizen or getting sponsored directly by an employer, but those can be tougher.
So for F1 holders, it's a bit of a winding road.
It is. It takes some planning and some luck.
Okay, now what about the J1 exchange visitor visa?
This one's interesting. It covers a lot of different activities.
Like research au pair positions,
Mm-hmm.
cultural exchange programs.
Exactly. It's all about fostering global understanding.
Right, but there's a catch here too, isn't there?
There is. Many J1 holders have to deal with a 2-year home country physical presence requirement.
What does that mean?
It means they have to go back to their home country for 2 years after their J1 program ends.
Before they can even apply for a green card.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a big hurdle for many people.
Are there exceptions to that rule?
There are waivers, but they're not easy to get.
So if you're on a J1 visa, getting a green card takes careful planning.
It does. You really have to understand the rules and strategize your next steps.
Okay, so we've covered the non-immigrant visas that could lead to a green card.
The ones that start temporary but might become permanent.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the visas that are designed to grant permanent residency right from the start.
The immigrant visas.
These are the ones where the end goal is a green card.
Right. These are for people who want to make the U.S. their permanent home.
And our sources divide these into 4 main categories.
Family-based, employment-based, the diversity visa lottery, and special pathways for certain situations.
So let's start with family-based green cards.
Yeah.
These are for U.S. citizens or green card holders who want to sponsor family members, right?
Exactly. It's all about keeping families together.
And within this category, there are 2 main groups.
There are immediate relatives and family preference categories.
Okay, let's start with immediate relatives.
This group includes the spouses, children under 21, and parents of U.S. citizens.
And this group gets special treatment, right?
They do. There are no limits on how many visas are issued each year, and the processing times are generally much faster.
So if you're an immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, you're in luck.
You are. You've got a pretty clear path to a green card.
And what about the family preference categories?
This group covers a wider range of family relationships.
Like siblings and adult children.
Exactly. U.S. citizens can sponsor their unmarried adult children, their married children, and their siblings.
Okay.
And green card holders can sponsor their spouses and their unmarried adult children.
But there's a catch with this group, right?
There is. They have annual limits on how many visas are issued, and that leads to waiting lists.
So it could take years to get a green card this way.
It could, depending on your relationship to the sponsor and your country of origin.
Okay, so family-based green cards are all about who you're related to and your patients.
Pretty much. It's a system designed to prioritize close family ties, but sometimes it can take a while.
Okay, let's move on to